Hello, Tarot friends. Today you'll see how to tell a story using tarot cards, which can be a wonderful way to learn tarot or deepen your tarot practice. Tarot came to me at a dark time of my life, and in some ways even saved my life, so it feels right to tell that story with the cards themselves. This video is a VR or video reply to a Tarot community playlist and hashtag called TarotJourneyThroughDecks. A Tarot YouTuber named Simon, who has this wonderful channel, The Hermits Cave, created the tag and invited Tarot YouTubers to share the decks that have most influenced us on our Tarot path. Simon gives 4 prompts for this tarot tag as the beginning, the deepening, now, and milestones. So we'll touch upon each of these while telling a story with the cards and decks. Links to Simon's original video and other videos on this Tarot community playlist are in the description. To preface, storytelling with tarot can be a great technique if you're learning tarot or if you want to deepen your tarot practice, because it offers a creative way to learn tarot cards that doesn't depend on doing readings. So in this video, you'll see how to do that. If you're new to the channel, welcome to Anastasia Tarot and Vedic Astrology, where we sail the cosmic currents searching for divine wisdom, one tarot card at a time. Now let's get into this tarot journey through decks. So prompt number 1, the beginning, the deck that started your tarot journey. And for me, like many people in the USA, it was this plaid back Rider-Waite-Smith deck. Many people in the UK and Europe got started with the JJ Swiss deck, but in the US, this plaid back Rider-Waite-Smith was the deck that got many of us started on our tarot journey. Now, my original deck is long gone, but the deck I'm using in this video was left to me by my friend Linda after she died. So Linda, rest in peace, and thank you for making it possible to show this deck. So now, here's the story of how I met tarot and got started in this 46-year fool's journey. I got into tarot at a dark time. My mother died suddenly when I was 13. And at this time, my father and I were alone in the house. My older brother and sister were out in the world living their lives. And back in the 1970s, grief counseling wasn't a thing. My father, may he rest in peace, dealt with the heartbreak by drinking. And he listened to these old 78 jazz records from the 1940s, which was when he had married my mom right before going off to fly bomber planes in World War II. And I started smoking and drinking and doing these sorts of things that children ought not to do because I had no other way to cope with the loss. And by the time I was 14, my father had gone through his 1-year grieving process and he found a widow he was going to marry. So he got his life back together, but I was always getting into trouble. For Christmas, the year that I was 14, my dad gave me a tarot deck. And a month later, when I was 15, he sent me to live with my older sister in the mountains of California. And I'm not going to talk about my sister right now because it would make the video way too long. She passed in 2020 and I still think of her every day. Anyway, before that Christmas gift, I had never seen tarot before. I had no idea what it was. So there I was living with my sister on this remote mountaintop, and I met this old witch woman, Angie, who became my spiritual grandmother. Angie lived alone in a stone house in this remote canyon, and she would get raw wool and dye it with natural dyes from plants she grew. Then she'd spin it and she'd knit hats or weave blankets and whatnot. She grew all sorts of herbs, which she used for healing. She was into fasting, herbs, natural medicine, all these types of things. And she became my spiritual teacher, which inspired me to get into this tarot deck that I had. So age 15, 16, I began really studying tarot. And I wasn't in school at this time because every school I enrolled in, I would break the rules and get expelled. Tarot became my school. I had 2 books. One was Eden Gray's Tarot Revealed, published in 1960, and the other was Eileen Connolly Tarot Handbook for the Apprentice, published in 1979, which was the hot new thing back then. I read those 2 books time and again and memorized every card meaning, upright and reversed, for every card in the deck. Even though I wasn't attending regular school, I was an A+ tarot student. When I was 17, I fell head over heels in love. Now, living on top of this mountain, there weren't many boys my age, and it was this remote mountain community populated by outlaw hippies and bikers and the hotshot crew. Now, the hotshots were these wildland firefighters who jumped out of helicopters to put out forest fires. And this man I fell in love with was on the hotshot crew. This time and place was still the Wild West in some ways. There was a general store with a gas pump in front and a saloon in back, and we all went there and everybody knew everybody and nobody asked for ID, so I was there in the saloon too. And there were bikers and growers and the hotshots and rattlesnake hunters who camped out in the backcountry hunting snakes for snakeskin boots, and they would come in on their supply runs. Anyway, it was a really different time. So this first great love of my life was half Apache and Pueblo, and he had powers, although he would never have said it. I later met his older sister who also had powers. They even called her bruja, which means witch in Spanish. In any case, this man I love was a terrible alcoholic. When he wasn't jumping out of helicopters to put out forest fires, he was in the saloon drinking himself into oblivion and puking in the parking lot. Anyway, we were together and I moved with him to San Luis Obispo when he quit the hotshots and got into AA, Alcoholics Anonymous. And he sobered up. And I loved this man so much that I would do anything for him and follow him anywhere. So when he sobered up and got AA, I sobered up and got AA. This man put me on a good path in life. He encouraged me to get my GED and go to college, so that's what I did. Our romantic relationship only lasted 4 years, but it completely changed the direction of my life. So fast forward about 10 years, and I was going to the University of Santa Barbara, and I was still using that plaid back Rider-Waite Smith deck. Toward the end of my time in university, I met a magical teacher, and this man introduced me to the Thoth deck. And this brings us to prompt number 2, the Deepening, a deck that deepened your tarot practice. And for me, that was definitely the Thoth deck. This man was a ceremonial magician who was into OTO and chaos magic, that sort of thing. And he worked with the Thoth deck. Angie had gotten me into earth-based spirituality, but I'd never studied the occult or Hermeticism, and it was a whole new world. I studied Crowley's Book of Thoth, which in the early 1990s, that was pretty much the only book out there. And in 2003, Lon Milo Duquette published his book, Understanding the Thoth Tarot. And this book tremendously deepened and transformed my knowledge, not just of Thoth, but of Tarot in general. So Thoth became part of my magical practice and studies, and I learned to use Tarot for exploring spiritual and magical themes. But it never resonated for me as a reading deck. I still found myself returning to Rider-Waite-Smith if I wanted to do a reading. So for many years, my life continued this way. I had a plaid back Rider-Waite-Smith deck and I had a Thoth Tarot, and that was that. The only other Tarot decks I had even seen at this stage of my life were Marseille decks, and I wasn't attracted to Tarot de Marseille because I found the artwork too primitive. Anyway, in the mid-1990s, the local economy crashed, and there were no jobs. So I ended up working the psychic phone lines. I did so many readings that I would wear out one deck and burn it and then buy another plaid back Rider-Waite-Smith to replace the one that I'd burned. Anyway, fast forward to about 2017, 2018, the digital revolution has happened, online shopping has happened. I had taken early retirement from a government job and ended up reading Tarot at a metaphysical shop that sold crystals and Tarot decks, and it blew my mind. I saw all these different decks. And the Tarot world had changed. Clients no longer expected to see a Rider-Waite-Smith or a Marseille deck. Professional readings were using all sorts of decks. Detour to prompt number 4, the milestones. Around 2017, 2018, I started to branch out, and one of the first decks I acquired was Ciro Marchetti, Legacy of the Divine, which quickly became my all-time favorite go-to deck. So I mentioned Legacy of the Divine in my top 15 recommended decks video. I've read dozens or even hundreds of clients with this deck and just adore it. Legacy of the Divine was the deck that released me from Rider-Waite-Smith prison. Still, I don't want to diss Rider-Waite-Smith. That deck is baked into my Tarot consciousness. So shout out to US Games for releasing the Rider-Waite-Smith Centennial Edition, which came to replace the old plaid-back version in my Tarot practice. In 2013, I had discovered Ayurveda and Vedic astrology. And by 2017, this had completely revolutionized the way I read Tarot. The Hermetic Kabbalah never resonated for me. And when I started applying Vedic knowledge and Vedic astrology to Tarot, it totally blew my mind. Even after 40 years, this was the first time I felt that I really understood the court cards. I developed my Yoga of Tarot system and started working with Rider-Waite-Smith in a whole new way. So I count Rider-Waite-Smith Centennial as a milestone, since that's the deck I used to develop the Yoga of Tarot. Anyhow, from working in this store, I started teaching Tarot classes. And I purchased historic decks because I wanted my students to see Tarot's development through time. I became fascinated with Hermetic and Renaissance astrology and their relationship to Vedic astrology. And in fact, in some of these old historic decks, this is the moon card in this particular deck, but in some of these old historic decks depicted the moon card and the star card actually showed astrologers working at their craft. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. As I got deeper into my studies of Renaissance Italy, it led to another milestone, which was confirmation of a past life memory from studying the Sola Busca tarot. That's this deck here. Now, I've always had past life recall. As Lady Gaga says, I was born this way. But in all my life, I never got actual proof that any of my memories were real. Then I was studying the Sola Busca deck, this Italian deck from the 1400s. And I got irrefutable proof for a past life from studying this deck. So I don't read with Sola Busca. This is an extremely dark deck. It really creeps me out. So I just never read with this deck. It's just absolutely too dark for me to read with. However, I do count it as a milestone deck, not only in Tarot's development, because it did form the inspiration for Pamela Coleman Smith's illustrated pips in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, but also I had never in my whole life gotten confirmation that a past life memory was actually real. Anyway, at this stage in my Fool's journey, I have a number of modern decks that I really enjoy, but for the most part, it's old Italian Tarocchi decks that resonate for me. And I feel such great love and gratitude to the deck creators who are reviving these old decks and making them available to us. So prompt number 3, the now. I use several Tarocchi decks these days, which I featured in some of my other videos, but Tarocchi Fine Dalla Torre from the Museo Internazionale dei Tarocchi epitomizes this for me. It's one of my favorite antique deck reproductions. This deck deserves its own video, so I'll be making a flip through soon. And for me, it just feels like coming home to read these old Italian decks, because they just create a direct lineage to Tarot's birth in Renaissance Italy. Thank you so much for watching this Tarot journey through decks. May you enjoy the blessings of good health, peace, prosperity, and wisdom, whatever deck you're using. All hail the mighty algorithm. Please like and subscribe to help make this content visible to other people who might enjoy it. And let me know in the comments, what were some of your formative decks? What decks have really changed your life or influenced your tarot path?